Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday stated that many world leaders who do come out publicly to condemn the Israel war in Gaza do privately thank Israel for staging the war against Hamas, and according to Benjamin Netanyahu, the world leaders tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence, once said, "If the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 C.I.As, 5 C.I.As. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Mertz admitted the truth. This, Benjamin Netanyahu stated when the speech was being broadcast live via huge loudspeakers that were placed on the Gaza border while the Israel Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, which, his appearance drew a mix of applause and protest, with some delegates walking out of the hall as he took the stage. You know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us, privately thank us," Benjamin Netanyahu stated in response. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated and blamed the Israel war in Gaza on Iran, saying, "Iran terror axis threatened the peace of the entire world." Some parts of the long speech by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations General Assembly are presented verbatim below. Mr. President, the families of our dear hostages languishing in the dungeons of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen, last year, I stood at this podium, and I showed this map. It shows the curse of Iran's terror axis. This axis threatened the peace of the entire world. It threatened the stability of our region and the very existence of my country Israel. Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. From Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah had launched thousands of missiles and rockets at our cities, terrorizing our citizens. In Syria, the murderous dictator Assad hosted Iran's forces, tightening a noose of death around our throats. In Yemen, the Houthis launched ballistic missiles at Israel, while choking global trade at the mouth of the Red Sea. So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. We crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. Remember those beepers, the pagers? We paged Hezbollah, and believe me, they got the message and thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above everything else that I could say to you all that we did in this past year, in this past decade, we devastated Iran's atomic weapons and ballistic missile programs. Here's where things stand today. Half the Houthi leadership are Yemen, gone. Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, gone. Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, gone. The Assad regime in Syria, gone. Those militias in Iraq, well, they're still deterred. And their leaders, if they attack Israel, will also be gone. And for Iran's top military commanders and its top nuclear scientists, well, they're gone too. Israel's 12-day war with Iran, which I renamed Operation Rising Lion, that's from the Bible. This 12-day war will go down in the annals of military history. Our daring pilots neutralized Iran's missile defenses and took control of the skies over Tehran. You saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action. President Trump and I promised to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. And we delivered on that promise. We removed an existential threat to Israel, and a mortal threat to the civilized world. We lifted a dark cloud that could have claimed millions and millions of lives. But, ladies and gentlemen, we must remain vigilant. We must remain absolutely clear-minded and vigilant. We must not allow Iran to rebuild its military nuclear capacities. Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium, these stockpiles must be eliminated. And tomorrow, UN Security Council sanctions on Iran must be snapped back. Thanks to the resolve of our people, the courage of our soldiers, and the bold decisions we took, Israel rebounded from its darkest day to deliver one of the most stunning military comebacks in history. But we're not done yet. The final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job, and that is why we want to do so as fast as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th. But we remember, Israel remembers October 7th. On that day, I'll tell you, you can remember October 7th too. You see this large pin here? It's a QR code. What I ask you to do is hold up your phones, zoom in, and you too will see why we fight, and why we must win. It's all in here. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans, and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burned babies alive. They burned babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters! These monsters took more than 250 people hostage. Those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers, and the grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. So far, we've brought home 207 of these hostages. But 48 still remain in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive, starved, tortured, deprived of any daylight, deprived of humanity. These are the names of the 20 living hostages. Matan Angrest, Gali and Ziv Berman, brothers, Elkanah Bobot, Rom Braslavsky, Nimrod Cohen, Ariel and David Cuneo, another pair of brothers, Guy Gilboa Dalal, Eviatar David. You saw the picture of Eviatar David, emaciated, forced to dig his own grave. Maxim Herken, Eitan Horn, Segev Kalfan, Bar Cooperstein, Omri Meiron, Eitan Moore, Yosef Haim Ohana, Alon Ohel, Avanatan Nur and Matan Zangauka. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do something I've never done before. I want to speak from this forum directly to those hostages through loudspeakers. I've surrounded Gaza with massive loudspeakers connected to this microphone in the hope that our dear hostages will hear my message. I will say it first in Hebrew, and then in English. Hebrew, our brave heroes. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu, speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter, and we will not rest, until we bring all of you home. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried, they're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders, and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms, let my people go, free the hostages, all of them, the whole 48, free the hostages now. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. Ladies and gentlemen, if Hamas agrees to our demands, the war could end right now. Gaza would be demilitarized, Israel would retain overriding security control, and a peaceful civilian authority would be established by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel. Of course, you understand that the war in Gaza has affected every Israeli. But I am sure there are people in New York, London, Melbourne and elsewhere who are probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? The answer is, everything. Because our enemies are your enemies. Let's do something else. Another first at the UN. Let's do a pop quiz. Raise your hand if you know the answer. First question. Who shouts, "Death to America"? Is it A, Iran, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, the Houthis, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct. All of the above. Second question. Who has murdered Americans and Europeans in cold blood? A. Al-Qaeda. B. Hamas. C. Hezbollah. D. Iran, or E. All of the above. Correct again. All of the above. So here's the point I want to make. Our enemies hate all of us with equal venom. They want to drag the modern world back to the past, to a dark age of violence, fanaticism, and terror. I think many of you are already feeling in your own societies the radical Islamist surge. I'm sure you do. You know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us, privately thank us. They tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force intelligence, once said, "If the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 C.I.As. 5 C.I.As. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Mertz admitted the truth. He said, "Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us." President Trump understands better than any other leader that Israel and America face a common threat. He showed the world that when Iran and its proxies murder Americans, take Americans hostage, shout death to America, burn American flags and try to assassinate the President of the United States, not once, but twice. He showed them there is a price to pay for all that. Regrettably, many leaders who are represented in this hall, they send a very different message. Sure, in the days immediately following October 7th, many of them supported Israel. But that support quickly evaporated when Israel did what any self-respecting nation would do in the wake of such a savage attack.
Condemn, bringing you the news in a more digital way.